Fieldpiece at fieldpiece.com. Navac at navacglobal.com. Refrigeration Technologies at refrigtech.com. Carrier and carrier.com.
I'm a fan of UEI combustion analyzers, and a big reason I'm a fan is because of their overall low cost of operation, their lifetime cost of operation. Now you can keep your UEI combustion analyzers at their best with the UEI Service Plus guarantee. Book your annual recertification online at ueitest.com/service, and here's what you get. Free shipping both ways, a warranty extension for 1 more year up to 10 years max, and same-day return shipping the day they receive your analyzer. Guaranteed. So don't miss out. Get the full scoop at hvacrschool.com/UEI service. UEI Service Plus. More than a promise, it's your performance guaranteed.
So how do we know when the vacuum is done?
Yeah. We use a micron gauge for that. I think it's right here in my tool bag somewhere.
I'm glad to see you finally use it again. You know it's the right thing to do.
Oh, come on, man. You know nobody uses those things. They're just a waste of time. If a 30-minute vacuum was good enough in 1994, it's good enough today.
That thing looks dusty. Don't you use it all the time?
Yeah, that dust sure does build up quick in Florida.
Just tell him the truth. Admit that you have sinned and be free.
Just tell that snot-nosed rookie how it used to be. The customer should feel lucky that you pull a vacuum at all instead of just blow and go.
It's only getting down to 3,000. What's wrong?
Oh yeah, that's normal.
What? What's normal about it? You probably have a leak.
It shows what a finicky piece of crap a micron gauge is anyway. Just charge it and be done with it.
Are you sure? How do we know there isn't a leak?
Yeah, that's good enough. Sometimes these train units only pull down that far.
No!
Yes.
How do you know if the pump is working?
Hey, what do you mean, how do I know? When you've been doing it 30 years like me, I can tell just by listening to it.
Yes.
And now your host, the guy who checks the air filter of every single hotel room right when he walks in, but still can't change his own filter when he's supposed to, Bryan Orr.
Well, thank you, Mr. Joel Sharpton, for that kind intro, I think. Okay, thanks for taking the time to listen to the HVAC School podcast. Hopefully your career won't regret it, unless I tell you a bunch of lies, which is altogether possible. On today's podcast, this is actually a meeting that I did just this week, actually. We had the hurricane come through Florida, and I wanted to get the techs back together. We actually have a meeting every Monday, but in this case, I wanted to describe to them an incident that happened that, of course, I'm not proud of. It was a mistake that got a little out of hand. So one thing that you're going to be tempted to do is say, oh, this should never happen. Good company, this kind of stuff would never happen. I want you to understand that we took care of the customer. The customer did not pay any additional for our mistake. We always do the right thing with that sort of thing. But then secondly, just to know that, look, these things do happen. And I want to be transparent about it and transparent about the meeting that I had with the technicians about it. It was just a series of unfortunate events. Our 3 very newest technicians were all the 3 that happened to go there. And in the final case, it was actually a guy who was on call. So if it had been during regular hours, we would have sent a senior tech out. But because he was the on-call tech, he ended up being the one to figure out what was wrong. Another thing to note is I'm the only one who's mic'd, just because I didn't want to have to set up a complex mic system with all the echoes and everything. So I'm the only one with a mic. The technician comments and my brother, who's the service manager, you couldn't really hear them, so I edited most of them out. But they were responses. It wasn't just me talking all the way through. I don't want you to think I'm that much of a narcissist. So we talk about a lot of things, including diagnosing the entire system, a little bit about micron gauges, a little bit about pool heaters, actually. So if you're in a market where you do any work on pool heat pumps, we talk a little bit about that. It also applies to gas heaters. So this is our meeting from 10/10/2016. This comes down to actually understanding what you're doing. And so when you're doing something and you don't understand what you're doing, you're going to do weird things. And so you have to start to understand what you're doing. And when we don't put a value on actually understanding what we're doing, then we don't understand what we're doing. And that's what being a parts changer is. That's like the dirty word. If you call yourself a technician and someone else would call you a parts changer, that's like, I don't know what that would be in different industries, but that's like a dirty term. It means that you go and you just start changing parts, seeing what makes it stop doing what it's doing, because you don't have understanding of what's going on. Parts changers start by changing capacitors, and then they change a contactor, and then they change the transformer, and then they put 5 fuses in, and then they strip back wires, and then they blah, 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 and then they blah, 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 and then they change the motor, and then because they don't know what they're doing, they're just changing parts until it stops. Right. Right. And you don't want to be, that's not a technical, and a lot of people do that. Some people do it because they are shady, salesy type people, and some people do it because they just think that that's how it's done. And I think when we do it, it's because we just think that's how it's done, and that's not how it's done. I still didn't get responses from everybody on that one email that I sent with the things that need to happen on every service call, and like a couple things came up that kind of scared me. There was one specific call, and that was totally my fault, by the way. The responsibility of what happened in that instance was mine, because when I saw the initial diagnosis, I was like, that's wrong, and I didn't intervene. And so I could have stopped what ended up happening from happening. But I'll just go through the circumstance. So for those of you who were involved in this call, I'm not picking on you. Don't think I am, because this was my fault, not really as much yours. But what occurred was we had a newer technician diagnose a leaking evaporator coil on a 410A system. It's 3 months old. We didn't install it. Diagnoses leaking evaporator coil, uses electronic leak detectors, picking up something in the evap. We quote the coil. Customer has us do it. We install the coil. The coil is installed by a brand new technician. That's when I kind of got involved and was like, just make sure there's no other leaks. Well, within 7 days, the customer called us back and the system was low again. So then we went out with another junior technician and it quoted the customer for more refrigerant, quoted the customer for a leak detection, and the customer, of course, freaks out because he's a normal human being. And so then the technician says, okay, I won't charge you for the leak detection, I'll just charge you for the refrigerant. So that's what happens. No, the customer still declined the leak detection and said, this is crazy. The leak has to be in the line set because that's the only thing that wasn't replaced. Just quote me on a line set. Monday, I find out, okay, this is what's going on. So we end up doing a line isolation test. Bert goes, does the line isolation test. Where's Bert? There you are. And you find a leak in the line set, right? Okay. Replace the line set, run it overhead. It all ends up being fine. Right? Did it all end up being fine? How was the customer? He's good. Okay, good. So, but of course, we didn't do well on that job. The principle here is we could have caught that a lot of different ways. And this is not a discussion of what we should have done as much as what we must do moving forward. Because what we should have done, there's a lot of things that should have happened, but we haven't done as a management team what we needed to do to make sure that they would. First thing is, when a brand new technician diagnoses leaking evaporator coil on a 3-month-old system, someone should have probably said, whoa, that is not normal. I've never had it happen. Maybe Nathan has. Have you ever had it happen? 3-month-old system leaking evaporator coil?
Yeah, but usually it's not.
It's just exceedingly rare. To the extent that if it happened, I would probably do a line isolation test before I even condemn the coil, because it's so rare.
Unless you can see it leaking, right?
But as a new technician, you don't know that. You don't know how rare it is. So we should have said that. But just so you know, brand new stuff failing, it usually either fails out of the box or it fails when it's a couple years old or older. Very rarely does it fail 2 or 3 months after it's installed. That's just rare. Now, does it happen? Sure, it can happen, but it's not as often. And whenever you see something that's uncommon, that's when you want to really slow down, okay? Here's the next thing. When you're using a leak detector, so I'm just kind of walking through this whole process and this series of unfortunate events so you can kind of get in your head things to look for. Is that fair? So again, not picking on anybody, just wanting to walk through the events. The next thing is when you're using a leak detector, remember that a leak detector picks up refrigerant no matter where it's coming from. It doesn't care where it's coming from. So if you have a large chase leak and that's underneath an air handler, and an air handler, as you know, draws air up through the coil, if you have a large chase leak and there's any way for that refrigerant to get out of the chase up into the return, it will, and you'll pick up refrigerant inside that return, which makes it kind of tricky to find, to say 100% is this evaporator coil leaking or not, unless you're going to a specific point and it's going off, backing off. going to a specific point, it's going off, backing off. If you're just going in generally speaking and there's just refrigerant in there and your leak detector's going off, that's not a great indication that the evap coil is leaking, because that could be coming from the chase. Is it rare? Yeah, it is rare. If you were at a 10-year-old system, then you'd be much more likely to be right. But because it's a 3-month-old system, okay, the only thing that wasn't replaced was the line set. That's when you want to automatically start thinking, all right, possible line set here. That's kind of putting the whole story together. Like, you want to think like a detective when you're looking at an air conditioner, where you're thinking of probabilities in addition to exactly what you're seeing. You're putting those two things together. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's most likely what happened. You were picking up refrigerant in the evaporator coil, but it wasn't actually coming from the evaporator coil, it was coming from the chase. All right, then the next technician goes out. He doesn't reconfirm anything. He just starts putting in an evap coil, right? Because that's what was pre-diagnosed. Now, if the new technician was a senior technician, the senior technician would have shown up and said, if he was doing his job right, if he was doing the way that we require it to be done, he would go out and say, hold up here, let me re-diagnose this before I start unboxing stuff and pumping down systems and all that kind of stuff. And then,
because it's only a 3-month-old.
correct, but either way, you're still going to reconfirm the diagnosis. And so the odds that both of them are going to confirm it wrong are going to be less. It's increasing the odds that you're going to get the diagnosis right. But let's say that the guy who installed the coil even did reconfirm it, and then he found the leak. Now he's gonna pull it out, he's gonna put the new coil in, he's gonna hook up his vacuum pump, he's gonna hook up his micron gauge. Well, he's gonna do a pressure test first. Now, if it's a small coil leak, pressure tests may not show, because pressure tests were generally pressurizing, 100, 120, 150 psi. That's normal. And so it takes a long time for a small leak to leak down, so you may not see it in the pressure test. Pressure test is mostly good for you to do your bubble test. By the way, you need to be doing a bubble test on any field joints that you do. So if you're bubbling everything, then you know your joints are sealed well. And then you're making sure everything's tight on your gauges, all that, and then you start to pull your micron vacuum. All right? Now, that micron gauge, if you have a leak at all, is not going to get down and stay at 500 microns. It's just not. So if we were using a micron gauge, we would have known something's up. Now, here's the other problem. Even if you are using a micron gauge, but you're using it because I'm telling you to use it, not because you actually know how it works, you're just going to use it. It's going to get down to 2,000 microns, and it's not going to go down any further, and then you're going to say, I bet my micron gauge is just screwed up. Release the charge, I'm out of here. That happens all the time. When I was riding with guys, that would happen. Even the rare guy who used a micron gauge, if it didn't pull down, he would just make some excuse. Like, it must not be working right, whatever. There's a way to verify all your tools. So what you do then is you take the micron gauge, you hook it up just to the pump, so it's just the pump and the micron gauge, and you see how far it goes down. If it goes down to 300 microns in a couple minutes, then you know you have a good, properly working micron gauge and properly working pump. If it doesn't, then you need to figure out, is it the pump or is it the micron gauge, right? And you just have to get another pump or get another micron gauge and try it. That's the process you have to follow. There's no other way of doing it. You with me so far? But if we had done that process, we would have known at that point, shoot, something else is wrong. And then we would have been able to stop the process, diagnose the line. We would have done a line isolation test, found the line set. We could have dealt with it before the customer had to. Now, we would have still been screwed, but at least the customer wouldn't have gotten upset, right? And that would have been better. Does anybody disagree with this process? Like, do you see a problem or a hole in this system? Hole in the system. There was one. It was in the line set. Get it? There's a little air conditioning humor there for you. All right, so it's some high level principles. First of all, as a company, we're always going to make things right with a customer. We're always going to do what we need to do in order to take care of a customer. So that's going to happen. You don't have to worry about that. But what ends up happening with us is when we make these kind of errors, we lose money. That's what it comes down to. A job that could have made us a lot of money ended up losing money. A job where we could have looked like a hero, we ended up looking just as dumb as the people who installed the system, right? And it ended up okay. It's fine. Not ripping you, but it was an opportunity that was missed. And so as a team, we have the ability to solve these issues, because if the second guy had gone out, even if the first guy got it wrong, if the second guy had gone out and said, hey, I reconfirmed, it actually isn't the coil, it's actually the line set, we're going to do that right now, we would have still looked like heroes because we're being so thorough, right? So we had so many opportunities to be heroes, but we missed them. And that's the point here, is to say none of you have to be perfect, as long as all of us are acting as a community in order to support one another to ensure that we catch these things. So I could have stepped in and fixed it. It's primarily my fault. The dispatcher could have paid attention and said, hey, look, we've only been sending junior guys to this job. Like, that's probably not a great idea at this point. Nathan could have stepped in. The second guy could have handled it. The third guy could have handled it better. You know, there's a lot of opportunity. All right, so have we sufficiently beat this dead horse? So the micron gauge was a huge part of that, but then also I'm just going to keep beating the flowing nitrogen thing, okay? Flowing nitrogen jag that I'm on. Judgment-free zone. Who here still has no idea what I'm talking about when I say flowing nitrogen? So quickly, flowing nitrogen does not mean pressurizing with nitrogen. It doesn't mean you braze under pressure. It means that you take a couple PSI, so 2 PSI up to 3 PSI of nitrogen, and you flow it through the line so that it's flowing in and out of the lines, which requires an open circuit. How you do that is either with the regulator that has the purge setting on it, but I've heard that even the purge setting on that is a little high. So what you have to do is you have to adjust down the gauge. Either at your gauge you can do it with a regular manifold. What you do is you just spin out that, you know that T-handle on the front of the manifold? You just spin out that T-handle until it's not giving you any pressure, and then you just slowly crack it in until you're just getting, well, let's just say 2 PSI is the standard. Maybe 1.5. Just a whisper of nitrogen. Just feel it coming out the other end. What is it?
The test and the braze and the purge. Right. The thing is,
oh, braze. Braze. Okay, good point. Nathan hates them. Okay, maybe you need both.
Oh, I do like the handle.
Yeah, the handle's really nice. So maybe it's a nice backup. Maybe you just have one of both. Maybe you have like a traditional one and then have the other one as a backup anyway. Well, I mean, it's not a super expensive tool, so if you take care of your tools, then you'll have them for a long time. Right? Yeah, so that's what you should, I mean, that should be part of the process anyway. If you go to school and learn this, that's what they teach you to do, is you spin it out until there's no pressure every time, and then you set it into what you want it to be. Every time when you're done, you spin it out again, set it into what you want it to be. That's how you're supposed to use it. It's the same thing with your torches too, by the way. You know, when they have those T-handles in the front, you use those to set the pressure so that all you have to do is just open them up full and light them. Did you guys know that? So generally speaking, 1010 would be a common one, or 711 would be a common way to set them. But if you set 1010 on your gauges and you light it, you're just going to have to do very fine adjustments. They'll light with them full open, and you maybe just crack them a little bit in order to adjust. Understand what I'm saying?
Helps not have stuff leak out of your hand.
It also, right, and it also helps, right, it helps prevent fires. It helps reduce waste on your oxygen acetylene, because now you're not going and then setting them down, that little bit of additional waste. Again, yeah, and so you're tweaking. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? You're tweaking them at the regulator, that T-handle at the regulator. And with those, the more you turn them in, the higher the pressure, and the more you turn them out, the lower the pressure. Do you know that? Those T-handles? Okay. So this comes down to, once again, just knowing how to use your tools. If you know how to use your tools, you can do a lot more cool things and prevent problems. Unless you're like Steve Worker and you think a torch is a flashlight. And then, I've had this torch on here for an hour. It's not doing a thing. I think I need a bigger bulb. By the way, if nobody has heard the latest episode of the podcast, Steve Worker does some voice acting. He's really the star. He's much more convincing than I am. Again, I want to talk about diagnosing the entire system, because this is the thing coming as we come into the fall, when we start to slow down. We had a couple days last week where we saw it get slow, right? And, all right, well, a hurricane was happening. But that's just a sampling. That's just a sampling. And this year, just telling you, I was patient with it over the hurricane because it was rare. It was just a couple days. But guys start hanging around the shop. And, and when you question anybody about it, they're like, oh, I'm off the clock. Well, that's not going to happen, because I can't know if you're off the clock or not. So what's going to start happening is either you're doing something productive or you're going home. Period. That's it. So help the schedule by diagnosing the whole system. Help the schedule by selling PM agreements. But diagnosing the whole system is even more important. Because if you go to a system and you're just in and out, capacitor, boom, boom, you're not checking the charge, you're not looking at the drain, you're not looking at the evaporator coil, you're not looking at the filter, you're not checking the capacitors, you're not doing all that kind of stuff, legitimate stuff that you need to be doing, contactor, then you're not serving anybody, right? So just discipline yourself to do that. I know we just keep saying that over and over, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over because it's really the key for us. There's two key things to being a really good technician. The one is to be able to focus in and diagnose things, meaning to take a big lot of information and narrow it down to a diagnosis. That's a really key technician trait. You see guys who aren't good technicians and they just flail. They just change parts, or they just keep bouncing back and forth to what possibilities are. So a good technician is able to take data and say, all right, my superheat's low, my suction's low, my head is normal, my subcool is normal, my split is high, I have an airflow problem. Right? That's a good technician can do that. But a good technician also, once they've diagnosed the airflow problem, they're still looking big, meaning they're still looking at the whole picture the entire time. So when they're diagnosing the dirty evaporator coil, they're still looking at the unbalanced blower wheel. They're still noticing the rusty accumulator bottom when they're looking in the condenser. They're noticing the copper is greening where it goes into the ground. They're noticing all these things and taking note of it. So they say, possible leak there, contactor pitted, start cap is leaking dielectric fluid. And these are all things that they're going to either look for problems or they're going to point out to the customer as a potential problem. So you say, oh, great, yeah, I'll hop up in the attic and take a look at that. I'll get my new FLIR thermal imaging camera and go up and check all your ductwork. Jesse's going to try it out for us and see how it works, but I think it's going to be pretty sweet, actually. Do you guys understand what I'm saying, though? Like, you want to be able to focus in and diagnose a problem, but you also want to be able to look big and see the entire system. And so what Nathan's saying is also the customer, if you're listening to them, they're going to reveal things to you that you can't see with your eyes, too. They're going to reveal, oh, my bedroom's hot. They're going to reveal, it just doesn't feel cool at night. They're going to reveal, my power bill's higher than it used to be. And you want to take those things seriously because those are all opportunities to diagnose the entire system. That's all part of being a good technician. So here's the principle. A good technician on a residential air conditioner should be able to diagnose pretty much anything in 30 minutes. But diagnosing the problem is not the same as looking at the entire system. If you can stay there longer and do more, then stay there longer and do more. If that works for the customer and it's what the system needs. This fall and winter, yeah, for sure. Like, I understand why it happens in the summer. It's still not right, but it's why it happens in the summers. You get so busy, so you start not wanting to knock out jobs, okay? I understand that happens, and it just happens. It's hard to do anything about. But as we start to slow down, you've got to retrain your mind to not get into lazy sit around the shop mode, which I'm just telling you, no matter how hardworking you think you are, when times get slow and the schedule gets weird to where it's like, there's 2 calls left and there's 4 guys who could do it, everybody just kind of congregates at the shop and just starts, are you gonna do that job? Are you gonna do that job? And everybody starts doing that. The only way to fix that is to be more proactive on the jobs that we're doing. There's no better time. We talk about hopping up in attics. There's no better time to do it than from now until March. Now's the time. Anytime there's any possible chance of fixing a duct problem, now's the time that we want to have those conversations. You want us to fix that? We can fix it right now. Now's when you want to do that. Let's really motivate our customers. Any duct repairs or if they've had a long-term balance problem, I've always felt warm in my bedroom. Now's the time to get that fixed. That's what you do when you get slow, is you have to get uncomfortable. It's because the tendency is we're slow now, so now I'm going to get comfortable. That's okay if you choose to do that. That's fine, but you're going to make less money because you're just going to go home. I mean, that's not like a threat. That's just the reality. Do you guys get that? That's not a threat. That's just the reality. We can't pay people for not doing productive work. It's just how the world works. Again, just to be clear, I don't want anyone to read into what we're saying because I know the side conversations can be, oh man, we're getting so greedy. Look, that's not it at all. You guys know that the customers who you have more conversations with and where you diagnose the whole system and you go through everything thoroughly and you're thoughtful, those are happier customers. Those are better relationships, not worse. It's not about taking advantage of anybody. All right, but here's what I was going to say about that. Because Steve was talking about side hustles the other day. Like we need a side hustle, extra ways to make money and all that kind of thing. If there's anything that you are going to do to move the company forward, you're going to get paid to do it. And you're probably going to get paid more than you would have gotten paid anyway. Like an example is, I write business articles occasionally, and I do it because it just makes content for me. I'm writing a book, and so it's a way for me to discipline myself to write. This lady pays me $50 per 500-word article. And it takes me on average about 25 minutes to write an article. Do the math on that. Like, she actually just reached out to me and said, hey, you want to write articles for me? But if I actually pursued people who actually were paying for business articles, you'd probably be about more like $100 per 500-word article. So we're the same way. Like, we're starving for content for our website. We're starving for content. HVAC School, we need content. We need videos demonstrating. Jesse did a video about how to diagnose a capacitor, I think. And the thing has like 40,000 views on YouTube. It's just him like, yeah, here's how you diagnose a capacitor. Our industry is just dying for decent content. And all of that benefits. It benefits us from a training standpoint, so like Steve's video. It benefits us from a training standpoint because now we can show how springs are replaced. But it also benefits we can cut it up into little pieces and just demonstrate different elements. We're not going to do the whole thing for the consumer, but just demonstrating our expertise in changing springs. So if you develop these skills, you're going to be able to make money, even when it's slow. Because I will pay you to do this stuff. But I don't want to have to go to you every day, have you wander in my office, all right, boss, what do I do? I'm not thinking about specifically what you can do this day. We all have stuff to do ourselves. So you can think, hey, I'm at this service call, I'm going to replace a motor. How about if I figure out a way to set up my phone so I can video myself replacing this motor and I'll just talk while I do it and hit record? Like, that's awesome.
Not to mention then when you shock yourself when the video gets
Yeah, have you guys seen that guy who keeps shocking himself? No, that guy has millions. That guy has millions of views. The guy who shocks himself and just videos it. Okay, finally, we're getting into pool heater season, okay? When you go to a pool heater, if you're new and you haven't worked on a lot of pool heaters, you just want to slow down. If there's any parts that are needed, take like a zillion photos. Hear me, everyone. If you work on a pool heater and a part's needed, take like a zillion photos and post them on Slack in the parts room, because take photos of the pool heater, take photos of the board, take photos of the other boards, take photos of any potential thing that could be wrong on that unit. Because calling a pool heater manufacturer is like calling your crazy Uncle Ned. You know, it's like, well, what color's the pool heater? I don't know, I've got the serial number. Yeah, well, we've got those in a book somewhere, but I don't know that. What color is it? Not kidding.
No,
that happens.
What color is it happens.
Yeah. How many buttons are there on the board? I don't know, it's the display board. Well, we use like 4 or 5 different ones. How many buttons are on it? I'm not kidding. What does the temperature sensor look like? Is it the round one or the oblong one? I'm not kidding. This is what it's like. Is it the black one or the white one? I don't know.
My favorite is when they're using a comparison. Is the one with the long cord or the
short cord? Yeah, no joke.
I don't know.
That's just how they are. So, because they're all just made by these crazy, like Aquacal, Pentair, Jandy, you know, these are the larger companies, and they're all still podunk little companies. Yeah, if you have a pool heater that failed because of the heat exchanger or something like that, yeah, yank the boards up, yank everything off them. Now you've got it on your truck, and so if you go to a similar heater, you can use that to test. You think it's the board? Now swap out this board, see if it works, you know, that kind of stuff. With pool heaters, it's a bigger problem, because with pool heaters, everything, any kind of weird part is going to take a week to get. So you order the wrong board, it comes out, it's been a week, you put it in, it doesn't work, customer's angry. It's not like Carrier where you can just run down and grab a new one.
It's like that gas station, oh brother, where art thou?
Right. That's a dad burn anomaly. It's 10 days from any place. No, 2 weeks. Take about 2 weeks. Okay. Any questions about that? So photos of everything, be thorough, do every test you can possibly do. They're not like air conditioners. Be more thoughtful, be more careful, okay?
I mean, they are like air conditioners.
They are like air conditioners, but they're not from the parts, getting parts for them part is not. And we will lose, if you guys are not careful, we will lose money in a second. Because you'll go take an expensive, and this comes back to re-diagnosis too. You'll get this expensive board off the truck, out of a supply house, it's $300. You'll unpackage it, now we can't return it, and it doesn't work, and now we just ate a $300 board. And now we just lost money on this job. And that will happen this year. The question is, how much will it happen? So be thoughtful, make sure that it looks like the right board before you unpackage it, you know, so just take it like, is this the right thing? You can usually look part numbers up online yourself if you want to see what they look like. We're going to need to like double and triple layer this. Because a lot of times these boards have interdependencies. You'll have like a board that's connected to another board with this little weird cable, and the problem is in this board, not that board, but they're talking to each other and it looks like it's this board. You know, that happens. Same thing with ductless systems, it's more common. So you just want to be a little more holistic about it. All right, finally, I want to do just a quick thing about eye protection. All right, because this is an area that I'm pretty certain we're not being thoughtful about. You should have eye protection in your regular tool bag. I suggest creating little tool kits. I like the little Rubbermaid totes, the little open totes, so you can just throw stuff in it. And in each one of those kits have some eyeglasses. So if you have a brazing kit, or you have a regular service call kit, or you have a duct job kit, you know, so you have your mastic and fab and whatever in it, and then you have another one with your side cutters and your meter and your needle nose pliers and your 6-in-1, and you just have these little kits. Have safety protection in each, eye protection in each of those, because that's, I mean, something gets in your eyes, you're done. Use them when you're brazing, because stuff can pop back into your eye. Use it when you're cutting, for sure. If you're ever cutting metal or wood or anything like that, use eye protection. It's just not that big of a deal if it's right there. The only reason it's a problem is because you don't have it convenient. But if you have it right there, you just pop them on. Use it when you're using chemicals. So if you're, I mean, this is like no joke. If you're spraying coil cleaner, especially in a confined space whatsoever, over your head or where it can splash back, definitely wear eye protection. Yeah, definitely. Well, no, I mean, like, I've done that. Yeah, so, and first of all, it's just a terrible idea because it's going to get on your face and burn you. So use proper dilution. You know, don't use super strong coil cleaner if you're doing anything in a confined space. If you're cleaning coils, don't clean them on driveways because you're going to stain the driveway. Clean them in the yard, but wet the yard first. Okay, when you wet the yard first, the grass leaves absorb the moisture, and so they're not taking in that coil cleaner right off the bat. Right, wash them off to the side, somewhere that's not going to, if it does die, nobody's going to get that upset. If you're cleaning coils, don't clean them in driveways, don't kill people's stuff. All right, that's that. Everybody sign off on this before you leave.